Okay, we are now live on YouTube.
Good morning and welcome to the December 7th public hearing and public meeting of the Landmarks Preservation Commission. We will start the morning by taking attendance. Mark Silverman, will you take attendance?
Chair Carroll.
Here.
Vice Chair Bland. Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Here.
Commissioner Chapin.
Here.
Commissioner Chen.
Yeah.
Commissioner Devonshire.
Here.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Here.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Here.
Commissioner Jefferson. Commissioner Lutfi. Commissioner Holford Smith.
Here.
All right, great. Thank you and welcome. Again, this is the December 7th public hearing and public meeting of the Landmarks Preservation Commission. We are going to start today with two public meeting items, which are items that have already had public hearings and for which the commissioners have already heard the proposal, the testimony, and have given comments, and the applicants are returning today with revised proposals in response to those comments. And then we will move to our public hearing agenda. And this meeting is being held via Zoom and live streamed on our YouTube channel. If you would like to watch the proceedings, you may do so by going to our YouTube channel. If you would like to testify on any of the hearing items, please join the meeting at the estimated time shown on our agenda, which can be found on our website. And with that, I will turn it over to Corey Harala, our Director of Preservation, to take us through the agendas.
Thank you, Sarah, and good morning, everyone. We'll start today's Preservation Department public meeting agenda with item number 1, LPC 22-00294, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 850, Lot 19, 21 East 21st Street in the Ladies Mile Historic District. This is a Queen Anne style row house designed by Bruce Price and built in 1878, and the application is to replace storefront and entrance infill, alter the facade and areaway, and install a barrier-free access lift. This was last presented at the public hearing of November 23rd, 2021, and no action was taken at that time. The staff will do a brief introduction before the applicant follows with the presentation after we open the proceedings.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we go ahead and open the proceedings now, just so it's done. So commissioners, look for my request to unmute you. All right, and Commissioner Devonshire, would you make a motion to open the proceedings?
So moved.
And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the applicants may speak after the staff introduces the item.
Hey, good morning, commissioners. Brian Blazak, preservation staff. The subject property is 21 East 21st Street, a Queen Anne style row house designed by Bruce Price and built in 1878 in the Ladies Mile Historic District. On November 23rd, the commissioners reviewed a proposal to replace storefront infill, alter the facade and areaway, and install a barrier-free access lift. While commissioners were generally supportive of the project, some asked the architect to explore the following. 1, to explore reintroducing horizontal and vertical elements within the opening at the parlor floor. 2, to explore a more restorative areaway railing design. 3, and to explore the appropriate sill height at the parlor floor openings. As a result, no action was taken. The proposal before you today has been modified as a response to that feedback. The architect, Jason Boutin, is here to further discuss these modifications.
Okay, Mr. Boutin, you may go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Andrew from CWV. Can someone let Jason in? He doesn't have access to the slides.
Could you tell
you
us
do?
what he's logged in as? Is it a phone number or a generic name? You don't see his name.
His email, Jason Boutin at cwbarchitects.com.
No, he's not listed under that name. Is there a phone number he may have called in on?
He's in the panelist list, Jason Boutin.
Okay, he is in there now. Okay.
Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. And do I have control?
I think if you click on the screen, you
Yep.
should be able to navigate.
No, Brian still has control of the screen, but if you'd like control, I will send it over to you.
Okay.
Okay,
There
if
we
you
go.
click on your screen and advance
Yep.
the slides using your arrow keys. Perfect.
Okay. Good morning, commissioners. I hope everyone's well. My name is Jason Boutin with CWB Architects, and I'm here with Andrew Acevedo, the project manager for the renovation. On this slide, we are showing sort of our basic responses, but I'm going to skip forward 2 slides which show the details below. But this is what you can see on this particular slide is the what we previously showed and our renovations, our changes. Based upon the feedback we received at the public hearing, we began exploring options for adding vertical and horizontal divisions to the large single light openings on the parlor floor, with the intention of reincorporating some of the language, which is likely part of the intended original design based upon an etching we had shown in the previous presentation. We started looking at the horizontal and vertical divisions separately, but we found that they provided more pleasing proportions when working together. And consequently, they prompted a few revisions to the basement floor elevations, again, mostly in the interest of providing consistency to the composition of the facade. We first added a columnette to the right, sort of wider column masonry bay. The width of the column matches a keystone detail that is still visible in the flat infill under the arch. This columnette will be faced with the same cast stone material as the base below. We then felt that the composition looked incomplete unless the column also appeared directly underneath in the opening in the basement floor, which can also be seen in the etching. Instead of a double door, we now have 2 single door openings with the same high base. We also added a horizontal transom, and it was aligned with the bottom of the decorative element on the adjacent masonry piers. The transom is part of the frame of the steel window. We did not introduce any decorative element into the transom, instead looking to work with the historical storefront show window fabric, which is also more appropriate to the intended commercial use. For the other revision that ended up taking place on the lower floor that made sense is we added the same recessed masonry frame that exists on the parlor floor openings to the basement floor. This helped create a more consistent line for the overall masonry bay. This recess will have the same depth as the recess for the masonry recesses up above. And then the sign banding sits slightly proud of that recess, but still sits back from the adjacent masonry piers. No other changes from the previous presentation are proposed for the facade. Sorry.
Okay, do you want to address the ironwork as well?
I am. I'm so sorry.
Okay,
I'm trying to
that's
find,
okay.
There's a slide that seems to be missing here. Okay, so I'll work with this slide. So sorry. It's just a lag. Okay. In response to the comments raised about the metal railing for the alleyway, we offer a clarification rather than a redesign. The design of the metal railing is meant to match the railing on the ADA lift. The reason we did this was because we were trying to incorporate this specific lift, which seemed to be received favorably in the public hearing. The manufacturer of this lift only has a few options for railing styles, and this style seemed to be the most appropriate. The rectilinear shape created by the balustrades in the areaway railing and the lift reflect the divisions of the balustrade in the stoop, which is part of the existing and historical conditions. We also feel that matching the railing to the lift will help the lift fit better in with the overall design, rather than seeing a transition back to something that would match the original. The railing on the lift would seemingly stick out a little bit more. And lastly, we'd like to mention that this particular lift is still under review with the Department of Buildings. Since the design of this railing is tied to the lift, and if this lift is not approved, we'll have to consider introducing a new stair, new lift, and a new railing design, and consequently we will need to seek another LPC approval. So you can see this on we're looking at the facade renderings here, showing you can see the design of the railings and the changes to the facade. Sorry, I'm having trouble trying to advance the. This is the rendering of the areaway, again showing the changes and the base of the facade. And lastly, one last item that was raised at the public hearing was a concern that the windowsills on that parlor floor were dropped, which would make the parlor floor fenestrations taller. This drawing shows a red reference line highlighting the level of the sill and the etching and where it would sit if projected onto our proposed elevation. Our scheme keeps the height of the windows very similar to the etching. The placement of the windowsill is also the point where the new brick, which was added in the 1970s renovation, stopped. It sort of marks the beginning of our work with the cast stone base, but it also aligns with the height shown in the etching. This concludes our presentation, and I welcome your questions.
Okay, great. Commissioners, do we have any questions? All right, I don't see any questions, so I think we can move straight to our discussion. And before we do that, I just want to note for the record that we did receive one letter from Christabel Goff on the revised proposals, and the letter is in support of the proposed changes, but would like to express that if demolition reveals unexpected surviving original fabric, the commission should be notified. And of course, that is our general policy that's written into our permit. So if any historic fabric is uncovered during the course of any work, we should be notified immediately. Okay, so we'll begin our discussion. And as that has been presented, the last time we saw this, I think most people had concerns with the proportions, and there were various suggestions about transoms or verticals. And the applicants have explored sort of both of those suggestions. And I think two commissioners had asked about the railing and if it could be more evocative of the stoop railing. And so we've heard the explanation for that. In terms of the lift, everybody was very enthusiastic about this model of lift and hoped that it would get approved at the Department of Buildings. So we'll go ahead and start our discussion. Commissioner Devonshire, I think you were fine with the railing. I think you just had concerns about the proportions and fitting within the existing.
And my concerns have been removed. I think this is quite acceptable. And thank you to the applicant.
Okay, great. And Commissioner Holford Smith, you also had similar concerns about the existing opening and proportions and suggested the vertical mullion.
Yes, I think this is a big improvement over the previous proposal. I kind of wish that the basement doors were not so tall, but I think if everyone else is okay with it, I'm fine with the revisions they've made. And I think the railing, keeping the railing separate is actually going to be a good thing to separate it from the amazing original railing that's there on the stairs.
Okay, great. And Commissioner Gustafson, you also had some concerns about the proportions, I think.
Yeah, I think this is a nice balance between the historical references and the storefront use. So resolve my concerns. I do think that the lift manufacturer will need to expand their repertoire on the rails, because while this is certainly appropriate, I can't see us in the future letting ourselves allow the lift to drive entire historical rails. But in this situation, I'm okay. But their business model needs to adjust.
Yeah, and I think if it gets approved, they can certainly start to do that, and we can try to also work with them. But I will say that, in applications where new ironwork is being installed that's not replacing historic ironwork, we often will approve something a little more simple so that it doesn't compete with the historic ironwork if it doesn't match the historic ironwork. So I think this is consistent with that. Commissioner Goldblum, I think you were the one who really raised the question about the railing, and you had the idea of the transoms.
Yeah, I think the transoms are fine. I would suggest that maybe they would, and it sounds like this is a minority view, and I would certainly vote for it even if it remains such without these comments. I think that they should investigate with the staff about the color of the mullions in view of having this to kind of form the the beginning of what we hope will be the restoration of the rest of the building's windows, so that they blend together as they were originally meant to. So just have the staff, investigate that with them. I also think that the railing is a lost opportunity. I can't say that it's inappropriate because we do approve that kind of thing if it's not there, but to have a lift that has a less than perfect chance of being approved, drive the wag the tail, wag the dog of the railing that's on the street seems a little bit, I don't know, unwise. I still think that for metalwork, which is easy to replicate and which is such a prominent feature of this building, I would urge them to work with the staff to actually replicate it and not worry about the lift, which may or may not be approved.
Okay, and I think if the lift isn't approved, we'll see a new application for the entire
Right.
areaway anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Chapin? I don't know if you were here for the last one. I think you were actually. I think you shared concerns about proportions maybe. Oops. Are you here, Commissioner Chapin?
The proportions, I think, of the windows are good. I think that's a definite improvement. I agree with Ann, maybe that the windows below are slightly large, but I don't think that's going to be that visible given where they're located. So I'm not that, I think this is approvable. And with regard to the railings, while I have some agreement with Michael's comments, at the same time, I think that this is something that is approvable. So I can approve it as presented.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Shamir Barron, you actually supported it entirely last time. So with the revisions, has that changed how you feel?
No, you're right. I did support it. And I think that the revisions are actually positive and improvement, especially recessing a bit this masonry openings. I think that was an interesting thing to do. And so I think it's approvable. And while I share Michael Goldblum's concerns about the rail, I'm happy to hear that if the lift is not approved, it'll return to us anyway. So thank you.
Okay, great. Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
Okay. And Commissioner Lutfi, I know you joined us. I don't know if you joined us in enough time to participate on this item. Commissioner Lutfi, did you see enough of this item to?
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw the whole thing.
Okay.
And I wasn't here for the initial presentation, but I took note of all of the of what the commissioners' comments were at that time, and it seems to me that they've been addressed. I think that it's more than acceptable.
Okay, great. So I think we have a consensus to approve. We can ask them, on their own to continue to, think about the railing as they work through their process with the Department of Buildings. And of course, if the lift is not approved, they'll come back to us anyway to address the entire areaway in some other manner. And as always, they can continue to work with the staff on the final finishes. So Commissioner Devonshire, would you make the motion to approve?
In the matter of 21 East 21st Street in the Ladies Mile Historic District, an application to replace storefront and entrance infill, alter the facade and areaway, install a barrier-free access lift. I recommend approval, finding that there is historic precedence for a storefront and show windows at the parlor level. Therefore, the replacement of existing windows and new fixed display windows with transoms is in keeping with the commercial evolution of this building. That the profile samples, proportions, composition, and finish of the proposed metal storefront infill, including fixed display windows with transoms at the parlor level and entrance doors with side lights at the basement, all with a black finish, will be consistent with storefronts often found at buildings of this age and style. That the introduction of a cast stone mullion at the wider opening of the eastern bay of the basement and parlor floors will recall the original design of the building. That the proposed primary entrance infill will be well scaled to the entrances in keeping with the materials and finishes of historic infill found in primary entrances of buildings of this age, type, and style. That the proposed cast stone infill at the basement level will be harmonious with the historic brick piers and limestone detailing at the parlor level. That the placement, proportions, finishes, and details of the areaway wall and ironwork will be compatible with the design of the building as in keeping with such aspects of other areaway walls and ironwork found throughout the streetscape. That the materials of the proposed areaway, including bluestone paving, planter boxes, are in keeping with the material palette of the buildings and areaways in historic districts. That the operable staircase from the sidewalk to the areaway, featuring bluestone treads and simple black railings, will provide barrier-free access to the building entrance in the least intrusive manner possible, and the vertical safety barrier will be stored below grade when it's in its resting position, minimizing the intrusion on the site.
And Commissioner Chen, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron, Commissioner Shamir Barron,
I'm sorry, aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
With 10 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, that's approved. Thank you and good luck with the Department of Buildings, and of course, keep the staff up to date.
Will do. Thank you very
Will do.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you. We'll move to the next item now.
Okay, the next item is public meeting item number 2, LPC 21-08857, application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Queens, block 8044, lot 5, 15 Shore Road in the Douglaston Historic District. This is a colonial revival style house designed by George Hardway and built in 1910. The application is to enlarge an extension, construct a porch and patio, modify the entrance, install a skylight, relocate a driveway and curb cut, and excavate and regrade portions of the site to access a new below grade garage. This was last presented at the public hearing of November 16th, 2021. No action was taken at that time. The staff will do a brief introduction before turning it over to the applicants after we open the proceedings.
Okay, great. And let's do that right now. Commissioner Shamir Barron, would you make a motion to open the proceedings?
So moved.
And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Second.
Any opposed? Okay, so the applicant may speak after the staff introduces the project.
Good morning, Commissioners. Julianne Wiesner-Chianese, Preservation Staff. The proposal as presented at the public hearing of November 16th, 2021 is for, as Corey mentioned, enlarging an extension, constructing a porch and decks, modifying the entrance, installing a skylight, relocating a driveway and curb cut, and excavating and regrading portions of the site to access a new below-grade garage. At the public hearing, there was a consensus of support for the demolition of the existing enclosed porch and deck, constructing a new addition with an integrated garage, regrading and modifying the driveway, and installing a skylight, decks, fencing, paving, and retaining walls. However, the commissioners expressed concerns about the replacement of the main entrance to the house, with some commissioners recommending revising the design to retain or recall the historic infill, and some commissioners supporting the new infill design, but recommending that the new entrance be recessed a little. Additionally, several of the commissioners recommended that the integration of the balustrade at the roof of the addition be restudied. The applicant has revised the proposal to recess the new entrance infill by 4 inches. No change has been made to the balustrade, but the applicant has prepared additional materials in support of the design, which he would like to present. So I will introduce the architect, Kevin Wolf, to describe the revisions.
Okay. Please go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, I'm not seeing the presentation.
Kevin, you just need to click on your screen and then you can advance the slides using your arrow keys, but be aware that there might be a lag because the presentation is quite large.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. Kevin Wolf, the architect for 15 Shore Road. Michael Arad, the owner, is also on the call. Michael is an architect, and I've worked closely with Michael on developing the scheme that you looked at 3 weeks ago. So the house is located on the west side of the district, overlooking Little Neck Bay. And it's a shingle-style house, gambrel roof. The three items, as Julianne mentioned, are the front door enclosure here. This is the existing conditions, reconstruction of a sun porch within the footprint horizontally, but stretched out to accommodate a new garage below. There's no garage at this house now, and currently there's a cantilever deck that would be replaced. The hipped roof of this would be made over as a sun deck. So the glassed-in vestibule currently is an aluminum enclosure with plexiglass panels that's been there since the 1960s. This pretty much obscures the visual of the existing front door, which is inside. It's recessed about 4 feet back. And some of the commissioners asked about retaining this front door and moving it forward when we look at the proposal to enclose this again with new material. So one of the first things that we did was look at this front door carefully. My instinct was to salvage this if we could. Unfortunately, this door, after 110 years, has been reworked for new door locks. It's been cut in half to make it a Dutch door, and is extremely unstable and fragile. So it was determined that this would not be able to be salvaged. So we'd like to propose a new front door. So the precedent for this was originally this house, 6 Arley Road, is a duplicate of 15 Shore Road. They're about a block away. And you can see in 15 Shore Road, this enclosure with the storm doors, and over here at 6 Arley Road, where it is flush. The house is identical in all other respects except for the door. So we proposed, our goal here was to create a vestibule that was weatherproof. Currently, it's not heated. There's no closet as you come into this house. So the goal was to capture this space, make it a heated space, have a bench with hooks, and some place for the family to have their shoes, their clothes, their jackets as they came into the house. House is heavily buffeted in the winter from Shore Road by the winds off Little Neck Bay, so we really needed a weatherproof enclosure. The other things we'll talk about is the deck detailing up here that came up with the commissioners, and I'll get to that in a moment. So first up, we'd be talking about the door, and this is the rendering of that door. In the new proposal, we recessed this 4 inches, which you can't see in this rendering, but you can see it in this coming up. The door, this is the existing door that we talked about, sliced in half. This panel cut out for lock work over the years. The proposed door would be more like this. And this is that door. And this is the 4-inch recess. One of the commissioners made the comment about getting a shadow line. So this gives us a very nice shadow line by recessing it that much. For the roof deck, there were also comments about what we call the skirt. So there's this gambrel roof house has this skirted roof that wraps the house. So there are several examples of wrapping the roof around the new deck that's proposed for 15 Shore. So here you can see in this slate roofed example how it wraps at 116 Richmond Road. This other example, a few blocks away at 310 Bayview, is more like our proposal and having a parapet that sits above the skirt. This roof here is a later addition, not part of the original house. So here is that roof from the west elevation. This is how that roof looks. This is the existing porch with the cantilevered deck here. Here is the proposed new deck on Tuscan columns. This is the detail that some of the commissioners commented on. So we wanted to show you some photographs of what that detail would be like so that that's more clearly understood. So in the rendering, you can see how this railing cuts into the parapet wall and connects with a small railing on top. And we have some photographs of a similar house, shingle style house with this detail. And this is what that would look like with the railing running in between. So that's this detail here. And on top of that railing, on the second floor deck only, is this railing that's on top of this railing. And so on the parts where there's a parapet, it would look something like this. And in that middle section facing west, this railing would look like this. And here's that rendering again with that section. And here is the existing house. And that concludes our proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? All right, I'm not seeing any questions, so I think we'll move to our discussion. And as was stated in the presentation, this application was very well received when we first saw it. I think the commissioners were very supportive of the changes as a whole and the improvement to the site and the details and features of the building. So I think we were in a really very positive place. And there were two sort of outstanding issues. One was the question of relocating the removal of the door and the relocation of the door. And the other was the question of the porch rail and how it intersects with the skirt and whether that was a typical condition. And so the applicants have revised their proposal for the door in terms of the location and talked a little bit about the existing conditions of the door and then showed some precedents for the porch intersecting the skirt of the roof in this manner. So the porch railing intersecting the skirt of the roof. So Commissioner Goldblum, would you like to start this one? I think you were actually fine with the porch roof condition, but did recommend that they were supportive of removing the existing door and recommended that they set the new door back slightly.
Right. Well, I guess slightly is the word. I would have wished for more, but I think this is appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Chapin, I think last time you were supportive of the removal of the door as well. And your concerns, I think, more were about the roof on the porch. So do you want to let us know how you feel now? Commissioner Chapin, just remember to unmute yourself. Or
Yeah,
accept my
sorry.
request.
I was okay. I was okay with the door because there are other situations where the door is flush as the applicant presented. I think having some recess is an improvement, and I can certainly approve the door as presented. I still feel that this, situation on top of the roof is a bit awkward, but I would not know how to solve it exactly. I think that, letting them have a balustrade and a place to walk out there is a nice feature. And I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts about how it could be improved in terms of the way it presents, because I do still find it a bit awkward. If other commissioners are comfortable with it, I'll support it. But perhaps someone else might have, a thought how to make it a little, sort of less, how what do I want to call it? So it calls attention to itself less. So that's my situation.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lutfi, you were one of the commissioners who were also comfortable with the removal of the door and pulling the door forward. And I think you also had some questions about the porch. So would you like to let us know where you are now?
Yeah, I just want to say again that I reiterate that I think this is really a wonderful project. And I do support it. Now, I think the changes to the door are fine, as you said, and I feel like there's the railing just above the, above the porch and the skirt. Somehow it would be a little better if it wasn't separate, and if somehow it could just be one piece that was connected to the addition. Otherwise, and if the other commissioners disagree, I'm fine. I think this is a terrific project.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Gustafson, I think last time you did have some concerns about the removal of the door.
Yeah, I have, and I guess I continue to have concerns. I don't think, at least as far as my comments are concerned, I don't think this responded to them. With regard to the door, I think I focused on the entire, if you looked at the photographs of the entire framing of the door, it was the concept was to bring that entire framing forward. I realized they responded on the door itself. I'm still not convinced that the door itself is not restorable. But my comment was focused on bringing the entire framing forward so that you'd have that image of that door. And I don't think the 4 inches is sufficient. I think the comparison with 6 Arlay actually tells me, is what really confirmed my view, that this is that recessed door was an extremely unique feature of this house, and which is now lost. Both in terms of materiality and in terms of the dimension and depth. And as far as I guess they call it the skirt, it appears to me that nothing has changed here. So my position hasn't changed. There probably are any of a dozen different solutions here, at least one of which is losing a foot or so of that standing space on that deck and sitting it behind the skirt. I think they compared to a house that has a skirt on the corners, and that's a wonderful thing. It's just that it's the continuity across that what I was looking for, and I think it's very easy to solve. But this does not solve it, and so I think the project as a whole is fantastic. I'm actually a little bit surprised that they weren't more responsive on those small issues, but that's where I am.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Shamir Baran, I know you weren't here last time, but.
That's right.
Yeah.
I wasn't here, but I agree with a lot of the comments and understand people's concern that probably entrance infill should have been recessed further in from the main facade. But I actually think that it's appropriate as is, and I don't think I would require any modifications beyond what they proposed.
Okay. Commissioner Holford Smith, you also weren't here, so if you've seen enough to understand the changes.
Right. I'm not troubled by the balustrade on the roof deck. I think that they resolved the corner detail. So I don't find that to be inappropriate to put the balustrade where they have it. The door, also questioning why they wholesale redesigned the door and frame it. I didn't hear the original proposal, but it seems like they could have taken the recessed door frame and pulled it forward. But I guess what I'm looking at here doesn't seem inappropriate, so I guess I can be okay with it.
Okay. And Commissioner Devonshire, you also weren't here, but
Yeah, but again, I think the applicant has done a good design. I'd echo the comments about the door. I think it needs to be recessed about a foot, not 4 inches. Otherwise, I think the design is suitable.
okay. And Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Anne. I think the applicant has tried to adjust, but I think that the issue is I understand the concern of the comments from the commissioners about the front door and the apron that John talked about. So I leave it up to the board members.
Okay, all right. So I think where we are is I think we have enough of us to vote to approve this with a slight adjustment that the door be that they continue to work with the staff to recess the door a bit more, and then we'll, I think, have enough to vote on the entire project. So Commissioner Goldblum, would you go ahead and make that motion?
Sure. Regarding, let's see, here we go. 15 Shore Road in the Douglaston Historic District. The application is to enlarge an extension, construct a porch and patio, modify the entrance, install a skylights, relocate a driveway and curb cut, and excavate and regrade portions of the site to access a new below-grade garage. I note that the building's style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Douglaston Historic District. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the demolition of the existing modern addition porch will not eliminate or damage any significant architectural features, that the proposed addition will be in keeping with the historic additions of and enclosed porches sometimes found at houses of this age and style in terms of placement, scale, and predominance of glazing, that the modest size and placement of the addition, slightly set back from the front facade of the house, will help it remain subordinate to the main house and will not cover more than 30% of the lot. That the proposed addition will be in keeping with the style of the house in terms of its materials, proportions, details, and finishes, that the decks at the sides of the house will be well scaled to the house, and in keeping with the decks and porches found at houses of this age and style in terms of material, finish, railing design, that the proposed below-grade garage integrated into the massing of the front of the house will be consistent with other garages in the historic district in terms of its presence and placement, that the excavation for the driveway and below-grade garage be compatible with the site, which already features sections of sloping terrain, that the garage entrance and length of the driveway will be largely screened from public view from thoroughfares by the grade change and evergreen plantings, that the driveway will be typical in terms of width and material, that the placement of the existing historic main entrance, infill, and surround, which are set back within a recessed entrance, will now eliminate a prominent or unifying feature of the front facade composition, that the proposed main entrance infill will be in keeping with entrances historically found at houses of this age and style in terms of its composition, proportions, materials, profiles, and finishes, that recessing the proposed infill will help maintain a distinction between planes, reflecting the historic volumetric relationship between the main facade and historic entrance, that the presence of a second small and simply designed skylight installed at modern roofing and placed symmetrically to align with the existing skylight will be discreet in presence, that the details and finishes of the metal fencing and masonry paving at the rear of the lot will help them remain a harmonious secondary presence when seen from public thoroughfares and limited views at a distance, that the concrete block retaining walls will not be visible from any public thoroughfares, and that the work will not require the removal of any mature trees. However, we request the applicant will work with staff to recess the entrance infill further from the main facade of at least 12 inches.
And Commissioner Devonshire, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. And Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Baring,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Gustafson,
Nay.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
With 9 in favor and 1 opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So please continue to work with the staff and good luck with the project. And we'll move to our public hearing agenda.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, the first public hearing item is item number 1, LPC 22-01377. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of the Bronx, block 3154, lot 7501. 2530 Grand Concourse, the Dollar Savings Bank building and first floor interior individual and interior landmark. This is a classicizing Art Deco style bank building and interior banking hall designed by Halsey, McCormick and Helmer, built in 1932 to 33 and expanded by the same firm in 1930 to 738 and 1949 to 52. The application is to modify entrance infill, install signage and lighting, and alter the interior banking hall.
Hey, commissioners, the applicants now have control of the screen. Just click on the screen and you can advance the slides using your arrow keys. Please state your name for the record and you may begin.
Good morning, commissioners. This is Lauren George. My name is Lauren George with CMB Consulting, and I represent the property owner, Mad Equities. You may recall that the same owner brought you the Bridge Market Trader Joe's application a couple of years ago. And we and the neighborhood are most delighted that that grocery store is now open. We're here today to introduce another grocery store use in the landmark building in the Bronx. I'm joined today by a team at Mad Equities, as well as Efrain Castro, co-owner of the property and the operator of the planned grocery store. Alexandra Abreu Pina from Wolfgang Architects will be presenting. And I believe she may still need to be unmuted on the phone. It's an 845 number. Next slide. We're excited to be here today, like I said, with a new proposal to activate this long dormant commercial space with a large fine fare supermarket, which will bring new jobs and increase this community's access to fresh and affordable food. This market will not only activate the street and improve public safety along this corridor, but there will be an estimated 100 permanent jobs created and 195 construction jobs supported by this project. Next slide. The Dollar Savings Bank, as was stated, was the first thrift institution to be organized in the Bronx in 1887. This individual and interior landmark was constructed as the bank's Fordham branch office in 1933 and enlarged in 1938. Designed by Adolf Mueller, next slide, with Halsey, McCormick, and Helmer. The building has a linear facade of polished granite, displaying 35-foot tall windows with decorative metal grills and elements of the classicizing Art Deco style. The 10-story office and clock tower addition was completed in 1952, bringing the total frontage on the concourse to 200 feet. It's important to note here, though, that my client only owns the commercial condo, which excludes the tower, and we're only proposing interior changes to the banking hall. Next slide. The banking room, an impressive and unobstructed space evoking the strength and stability of savings institutions, is around 10,000 square feet alone, with almost 40-foot high ceilings. The rectangular banking hall is dominated by massive terracotta corbels, marble flooring, polished limestone, and red marble pilasters. Next slide. Sunlight soars into the bank through the tall windows, illuminating their Art Deco bronze work. Clerestories characterize the hall's north and south ends, and chamfered corners link the clerestories and the east and west walls. The large open space is unified by the broad ribs of the ceiling panels with silver leaf rosette accents. And a few of the cylindrical opaque chandeliers in the Art Deco style still hang from the stylized decorative ceiling. Next slide. Analog clocks inscribed with Roman numerals serve as the focal point of both brass enclosed entrance vestibules in the interior banking hall. Each vestibule has brass swinging doors and a tripartite transom. We're proposing to modify this condition to facilitate the needs of a modern supermarket, but we will get to that detail shortly. Next slide. 5 murals by Angelo Magnanti depicting a history of the Bronx's early settlement fill the bays above the east wall. Ownership recognizes the outdated and insensitive nature of the messaging being shown in these murals, commissioned in the 30s, and they'll be left as is. But we intend to work with the Museum of the American Indian, the Bronx historian, and other stakeholders to contextualize these scenes with an interpretive plaque that honors the Munsee Lenape culture before this land purchase took place in the Lenape-Ho-King. Next slide. The monumental building has seen its share of trouble, however. The building has been broken into, vandalized, and looted on more than one occasion. And unfortunately, many historic elements, such as the bronze handrails and grillwork in the basement vault lobby, have been stolen. Late last winter, there was a serious flood in the basement caused by pipe theft. There was squatting in the building, requiring emergency demo and removal of significant amounts of debris to prevent the spread of mold. The property owner is committed to the preservation and restoration of the interior space and will be replacing many of the historic features in a phased manner. Next slide. Previous owners came before the commission in 2015 and 2017, obtaining approvals to divide the Great Banking Hall into two sections for ease of commercial viability. Those plans never came to fruition, and the space has sat vacant and underutilized for over 8 years. We're here now with a real tenant, ready to open with a use the community is eager to see. The interventions being proposed today are a vast improvement over the previously approved divided room scheme. And this single use opens up the space and allows the strengths and grandeur of this room to shine through. The minimal interventions, mostly life safety and code required, will facilitate the adaptive reuse of this space into a modern grocery store. Now my colleague Alexandra from Wolfgang will take you through the proposed changes.
Thank you, Lauren, for that lovely introduction to the project. Hi, everyone. I'm Alexandra from Wolfgang Architects. And here today, we're going to talk about the proposed work that we'll be doing to this historic building. Here we're just showing some vicinity maps. As you can see, the building is located in a busy area of Grand Concourse in the Bronx, near a subway station that serves the B and the D line, and it's also there's also a bus stop right in front of the building. Therefore, the property owners found it's very important to provide a supermarket at this very accessible and busy location. As Lauren explained, our goal is to celebrate this historic building and bring it back to life by repairing all the beautiful elements that this building has to offer. So we're going to start with the facade on Grand Concourse. With the new signage and the proposed work, we're hoping to keep the essence of the historic building. The main change to the exterior is to replace the missing or damaged elements to match the existing conditions. Per the rendering, you can see that the existing circular signs will be on the top of the facade will be replaced with new circular signage for the supermarket, and they will be backlit, which it was backlit at the time of designation when it was an Apple Bank. The signage banners will be installed in between the entrance and the exit of the supermarket in the existing mortar, so to not intervene with the facade. Then 10 new lights will be added to the top of the parapet of the facade to provide proper illumination to the sidewalk. One of the main things we are requesting from Landmarks today is approval to the alterations of the entrance and the exit of the building. The south entry and the north exit of the banking hall will be replaced with new sliding doors that will match the existing brass color and finish material. There's also the north tower entrance to the left of the elevation and rendering that was previously approved by Landmarks, and this is now missing. And we intend to install new sliding doors to match the new supermarket entries, and we'll be replacing all the broken glass panels that need repairing. And all the doors for each entry will be made of aluminum and anodized finished. Lastly, we're proposing new metal railing at the roof for protection that will not be visible from the street, and we'll show you that in a couple of slides. Here we have a close-up for each entrance and the exit of the building. On the left, you can see the north tower entrance. The new sliding doors and the 6 glass panels on each side of the door have black finish, and as the previously approved Landmarks door. In the middle, we have the north exit of the banking hall, and now the exit for the supermarket. And on the right, we have the new south entrance of the supermarket with the same finish and same color. As you can see, for the entrance and the exit of the banking hall, the main change is the installation of the new sliding doors, which will be the same height as the existing doors. The width and the vertical transom above it will remain the same, so these here. And the horizontal transom right above the door will be modified to fit the new sliding door motors. And here we're just showing you the railing as we mentioned. The new railing will be added at the roof for protection. The roof will only be accessible for maintenance. It's not open for the public. As you can see, it will not be visible, which will keep the look of the historic facade. And to achieve that, we've set back the railing 6 foot from the facade. Now we're going to get close up onto the signage. This is the top right. You can see the proposed lights to be installed at the top of the parapet for better sidewalk illumination. These fixtures will be installed by screwing them to the top of the parapet, so no penetration or alteration will be needed for the facade stone itself. There's new circular signage. This will be for the supermarket sign that will be backlit, and it's simply replacing the old Apple Bank signage. And we will be adding signage banners in between the exit and the entrance of the supermarket, and they will be 10 foot tall and about 8 foot from the sidewalk. Now onto the floor plan. This is the existing floor plan. This is the current condition of the space. It is fully open. There's nothing installed. The gray shading that you see is just representing what is outside of the landmarks, and in white is what is considered part of the landmarks now. This is the proposed plan for the supermarket. It's the layout of freestanding furniture and equipment. With this new use of the space as a supermarket, it is important to create a circulation flow that will make it easy for all of its customers. So therefore, the south door of the banking hall here will serve as the entrance to the supermarket, and then the north door of the banking hall will serve as the exit. For both the entrance and the exit, we will be installing new sliding doors, as we mentioned, and they will be of brass color and finish to replicate what was there before. And we'll zoom into these vestibules in a couple slides. Here we're showing a penetration plan. This shows the location for piping and electrical penetrations on the main floor. It's important to note that most of these penetrations, about 95%, will be done on the concrete floor portion and not on the marble floor portion. We want to note that at the time of designation, the floor was covered. A lot of the marble floor was covered in carpet and tiling, which caused some damage, but we'll also get more zoomed into that a little bit later as well. Here we're just showing you a loading plan. For the supermarket, the bulk of the deliveries will happen from the existing loading sidewalk hatch. So you can see on the pictures here at the top. And it's located here in blue at the bottom corner of the plan. And then all the deliveries will go into the cellar, and they will move to the back of house lifts shown as B and C. And these 2 lifts are only for the supermarket use to move product up and down. The owner's intent is to schedule primarily night deliveries to avoid heavy traffic and congestion on the main street. These are the egress plans for the first and the cellar. The green represents the primary tenant, which is the supermarket. The blue is for a future tenant, which is could possibly be a daycare. And the gray in the corner is just representing the tower portion, the residential portion, the tower portion of the building. And then in red, we're representing the egress path and corridors, and all the lines and shades in red are a 2-hour separation for egress. At the cellar, both the tenants of the supermarket and the potential daycare have access to both the exit stairs that lead to the street, which are located here on the west side of the building. As you can see, the main egress path for both the tenants on the cellar is happening on the west, as I mentioned, and this leads to the first floor and exit directly to the street. The reason we're using these stairs as the egress path is due to the use of the space. Both tenants and uses require 2 means of egress from the space that are fully fire rated and exits to the street. So in order to create an open floor plan on the first floor that allows for an efficient layout of the supermarket, we need to have the cellar occupants access these stairs as a means of egress. Otherwise, we would have to provide a fire-rated enclosed corridor in the middle of the first floor. So that's why these stairs are our exit from the cellar. And onto the proposed vestibules. As we mentioned, this is the biggest request we're asking from you today. It's the change on the entry and the exit vestibules of the banking hall. The required changes are necessary for the supermarket's use, and this will require modifying historic elements in order to achieve our goal, which is to provide a finished look that replicates the original design. Here you're seeing the south vestibule that serves as the entrance to the banking hall, and you can see that with the arrow that shows the direction from the sidewalk. As mentioned, these doors will be replaced with new sliding doors, and they will match the existing brass color. You can see that the vestibule here is extended past its original door location, and it's now more inside of the building. This is due to the egress requirements we mentioned earlier. At the right, we have the stair that has access to the cellar. This serves as even though that the vestibule is the main entrance to the supermarket, the stair serves as a second means of egress from the cellar for both tenants. So in order to comply with the fire safety and code requirements, we have to provide a fully 2-hour rated enclosure around the stair and maintain that rating until the occupants have made it to the street. And then at the front of the building, there will be some bollards installed to retain all the shopping carts from being stolen or carried away. So these are these squares that you see here. These are some elevations and sections of this vestibule. So here on the right, you can see the vestibule elevation. The new extension will be made from fire-rated glass to allow for visibility and transparency. So these are adjacent to the door, the sliding doors. All of this will be glass. The adjacent to it, the wall for the stair will be a typical 2-hour rated gypsum board wall. This is mainly due to cost. Fire-rated glass is very expensive, and ownership has compromised by providing glass around the vestibule to allow for visibility. The proposed elevation shows the sliding doors at 7 feet, which is the original height of the doors, and to either side we have the glass enclosure as mentioned. The only original element that's being modified is the horizontal transom that will fit the new sliding door motors, and that's about 8 inches. So that's why you see this dimension here at 7'8". Number 1 is showing you the sliding doors leading to the street from inside the vestibule. Number 3 is seeing the sliding door into the supermarket from inside the vestibule as well. And then 2 and 4 are just showing you the side views of the vestibule from inside of it, and you can see the glass enclosure around it. Looking at the existing here, this is the existing picture of the door. What we will be removing from the door is we'll be removing the whole door and then the horizontal transom right above it. And then everything else, the analog clocks and the vertical transoms, will stay as is. Our intervention still retains the original clock and while being compliant with code compliant and still suitable for the supermarket. And this is the north vestibule. This is the exit of the banking hall. We're proposing the same as the entrance for the vestibule, except we're not enlarging the enclosure in this case. We're just adding a ramp on the right side to provide accessibility due to the height difference on the first floor and then the sidewalk elevation. And again, as mentioned, these doors are being replaced with new sliding doors to match the existing color and finish, and they will be made out of aluminum for both the vestibule and the original historic doors. They will be removed, secured, and stored on site. And here are just here's the elevation of the vestibule. You can see the ramp, the new sliding doors, everything above it will stay the same. And from the side, everything will stay the same. And as mentioned, for the other vestibule, the same. We're taking out the doors and the horizontal transom. Everything else will stay, and then we'll just be implementing the new sliding doors within that space and having the motors for the sliding doors right above it. You can see it here. We also want to mention that the owner has intention of providing a flower shop to the left of the vestibule, which is this box you see here. The shop will be enclosed primarily due to the climate requirements for the flower shop, but the enclosure will be fully glass to provide visibility of the existing and also allow natural light to come in. Here are some details, typical details for the sliding doors and installation. The installation will be the same for all 3 doors, including the north tower entry. This will allow consistency and ease of construction, as well as visual uniformity. The only change that we're doing, as we mentioned, is taking about 8 inches of the transoms for the motors. And now we just want to show you some renderings of the space. Here we have a very schematic 3D view to show a feel of the volume of this space inside the supermarket with the new furniture and equipment. Here we have a larger view and the rendering. This is the existing condition. As we said, it's all now open, and this is the proposed condition with all the new equipment and furniture. As Lauren explained in the beginning, at the time of designation, there was a wall under the clerestory windows that separated the space for 2 different tenants. And we have now removed this wall to allow use of the entire floor. And we are happy that this new design will allow more visibility of the whole space. Here you can see the entrance and the exit into the supermarket. And with the windows, it will bring a lot of light in. As you can see, the furniture and the equipment are low enough, which allows for the grandeur of the space to stay intact. Here in the rendering on the left corner, you can see what we call the wall of values for the supermarket. This is the tallest furniture that's being proposed at 10 foot high. And as you can see, it doesn't take away. You can still see the materials, and the murals are still intact. This is pointing towards the entrance, and we want to point out here that all the cashier stations will be located very similar to the bank teller stations when it was the Dollar Savings Bank, so we're preserving that flow. And this is just a view into the exit. You can see the exit here and the ramp. These are just some details of the furniture that will be added to the supermarket. So in order to preserve the bank hall and the grandeur space, all of the new equipment and the furniture will be on the floor. Nothing will be attached to the wall, which means that all of these equipment and furniture will be removable and reversible. And now we want to talk about the floor, the proposed work for the floor, which we mentioned earlier. Through the years, the original floor has suffered some damage. At the time of designation, like we mentioned, they were covered in carpet and tile, which were then removed and worsened the condition of the floor. So we're trying to go above and beyond to restore and polish the floor and bring it back to its original design. So the damage there's been some damage to large sections of the marble, which are now concrete. We will be polishing and repairing cracks while matching the original color, and we will be covering and leveling everything for safety. As you can see on the rendering, a lot of the floor is covered with furniture and equipment, but needless to say, we believe it's a big improvement from our previous condition. And lastly, we want to talk about the North Tower entry door, which was previously approved by Landmarks in 2017. As you can see on here on the left side, the original condition of the window before the approval, and once it was approved in 2017, there was a design to add 4 sets of doors, which were then installed, but as we mentioned, they are now missing. They were removed. So here are the existing conditions. The entry is all boarded up, as you can see here on the right, and some glass has damaged on the windows, which will be repaired. There will also some damage to the stone in the entrance. You can see here on the bottom left corner. And so we're proposing to add the new sliding doors with the black frame as the previously approved landmark doors. These doors will allow visual uniformity, as we mentioned, with all the other entrances to the supermarket. And it's also create easy access for the future tenant, which could possibly be a daycare. So this will allow access to strollers, for example, by providing this sliding doors instead of typical swing doors. We're also proposing to have a 90-degree corner at the stone that will match the existing color and material. And by installing the cladding over the existing opening will prevent from cutting into the stone even more. So in closing, the property owners here today are committed to preparing all these historic elements in the building. We hope that you can accept these changes for the modern use of the supermarket that also will provide fire safety and code compliance to the building. We believe it is an improvement from the previously approved plans, not only by providing a single use of the space, but because we're hoping to bring this building back to life that will greatly benefit the neighborhood. Thank you for joining us today. The property owners and the team are looking forward for your support. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much. May I just add one comment? I'm sorry that I neglected to add before. The community board unanimously supported this application, and we also made the one recommendation that they changed, the suggestion that they made, which was keep the carts inside the store rather than on the sidewalk. So that was a change that we made for them. Just want you to know.
Okay, thank you. And we will probably get to that with the testimony. So we do, I think, have some questions. Commissioner Goldblum, please go ahead.
Thank you. Do you have a design of the bollards?
We actually don't yet, but we were planning on using something that is not shiny. That's kind of a matte finish, a standard historic bollard. It was discussed to use planters to keep the carts inside. But we think because the sidewalk is so busy, bollard, a slim bollard would be better. If you have suggestions, we'd love to.
Do the bollards actually fall on the landmark site?
No, they're on the sidewalk.
So they're off the landmark site.
I mean, I guess, right, the tax lot is the landmark site, right? So
Right.
that's why we didn't show them.
Is the glass clear or is the glass obscured?
It's clear.
It's clear, great. Is there going to be any air conditioning equipment that is exposed to the space, or are you able to reuse existing stuff so that you're keeping the space unencumbered?
Yeah, we're hoping to use the existing grills to leave the space, open as it's shown now.
Great. And can you go back to the rendering showing the, I think it's the first entrance that you showed, which is the south corner where that sheetrock box kind of grows up. There it is, bingo. Is there any reason why that sheetrock box has to be as tall as it is? To the left of the new vestibule?
Yeah, we can, right now we have it to meet the kind of like the bottom of the ceiling, but it can be lowered for to the minimum compliance height. Great.
And lastly, just to be clear, the renderings show the stone floor exposed. You had made a mention that you were going to be covering it. That's not, I misheard that, right?
The opposite.
Yeah.
It was
Good.
covered, and they have exposed it, and we'll be polishing it to restore it more.
And the parts where the concrete is, you're going to be infilling it to match?
Not with new marble, but with just an epoxy to make it.
Oh, so it's going to be like a kind of a coloring.
To be in a ruined state, yes.
Very good. Okay,
the
thank
equipment
you.
will be covering a lot of the concrete as well. So that's
Great.
good.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Commissioner Devonshire.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Yeah, I had some concerns about the bollards as well. I was curious about the spacing, and if I'm going to steal a grocery cart, I'll just lift it up over the bollards and throw it somewhere. I like the idea of them being stored inside though. And anyway, I'd like to see the bollard design a little more refined. The other thing, it was stated that there are 10 light fixtures going on the parapet, and it was stated that they would light the sidewalk. Are we sure about that, or is the intent to wash the facade of the building? Because if they were intended for the sidewalk, I think it would make more sense to have them somewhere lower on the building.
I mean, I think the location is to not disturb the stone as you know, as much as possible to avoid any kind of perforation of the stone. But
Is the light going to be washing the facades, or is it actually light for just the sidewalks?
it's really to eliminate the facade. I don't, you know, frankly, I don't know that it would reach all the way down to the sidewalk as they're indicating.
It was stated that it would be only for the sidewalk. Just curious. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I don't see any other questions right now, so we'll move to public testimony and we may have more questions after that. And if you're in the meeting and would like to speak on this item, please raise your virtual hand so we can identify you. And I will turn it over to Sasha Seeley to take us through the testimony.
Thank you. Okay, so for my signups, I have Fiona Reitz from Councilmember Oswald Felice's office. Fiona, you should be receiving a request from me to rejoin the meeting as a panelist. I see you have accepted that request. All you have to do now is unmute your mic, turn on your camera if you wish, and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. Okay, Fiona, I see you're in the meeting. I just need you, I'm asking you to unmute your mic.
Good morning. A little bit of a technical issue here. Thank you for having me. I am Fiona Reitz from Councilmember Oswald Felice's office, and I'm here on behalf of the council member who live very close to the location that will soon be the Fine Fair supermarket, just a few steps away. Councilmember Felice is pleased to be speaking in support of this application for the minor changes to the former Dollar Saving Bank interior space, which is located at 2530 Grand Concourse, that MedEquity will seek to renovate and build out the space for a modern, affordable supermarket for the community, while carefully maintaining the historical features and opening up the gem to the enjoyment, once again, of the community. MedEquity is collaborating with Fine Fair Supermarket, which will be the operating tenant after the improvements are made to the interior and the improvements made to the historic fabric of the building. Fine Fair will be occupying around 16,000 square feet of space on the first floor and in the cellar, and utilizing the floor as an office space. There will be hundreds of jobs supported by this project and a large new grocery store that will welcome the community. The property at 2530 Grand Concourse is located within the Community Board 7, which is home to the dynamic Fordham Road Commercial Corridor and the Fordham Road Business Improvement District, considered one of the major commercial hubs in the North Bronx. Public safety continues to be a major concern and a priority for the council member, particularly in this community. We have seen looping of not just this historic landmark in the past, but also of other business along the Fordham Road currently. As we continue to work to address these issues, the council member believes the occupancy of such a large property like this will help the crime rate to go down in the area with Poe Park on the next corner. We have a large stretch of 2 city blocks that take the average person 5 minutes to walk along the Grand Concourse. This area is not well lighted and can be very dim at night, and the train station stops can be very dangerous. So bringing in a supermarket to liven up the community will add to the public safety. The council member is delighted to support this request alongside recent approval of this landmark application by
Hi,
community.
Fiona, can you hear me?
Yes.
We're going over our 3 minutes. Can I ask you please to wrap up?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the council member is very pleased and look forward to the approval alongside other members of the community. And he thanks you for having him here, or I'm here on behalf of him.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next, I'll be calling on George Calderaro from Victorian Society, New York. George, you should be receiving a request from me to rejoin. I see that you are in the meeting, George. Okay, you can just unmute your mic and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning, Commissioners. George Calderaro, Chair of the Preservation Committee of the Victorian Society, New York, and a board member of the Art Deco Society, New York. The Victorian Society, as well as the Art Deco Society in New York, are very happy that this magnificent banking hall is going to be open to the public again, and commends the owners and architects for the thoughtful restoration of many original features. However, we believe that additional information and details covering some aspects of the proposal should be provided before any vote is taken. The 1994 designation report covering the exterior states that, quote, cast bronze doors are rolled across 3 glazed and brass swinging doors and their transoms, end quote, at the 2 street entrances to the banking hall. We submitted the photo with those. The presentation material, however, has no information about rolling doors at these entrances, where the applicant is proposing to replace the original swinging doors with new sliding doors. Before any decision is made about altering these entrances, the applicant should document the existence and condition of the cast bronze rolling doors and investigate the use of automatic door openers at the historic swinging doors. Concerning the proposed exterior signage, the applicant has a note to install new supermarket banners, quote, in existing mortars on drawing 2.2, but hasn't provided a detailed drawing. Installation details should be provided. Within the designated interior, the applicant is proposing to construct a pair of glass and metal, quote, supermarket vestibules abutting the historic bronze-clad entrances as shown in drawing 2.45. There aren't any installation details about the proposed supermarket vestibules. Attaching them to historic bronze entrance surrounds could do significant damage to these original interior features. The applicant should provide installation details showing that the new features will not be attached to the historic bronze. Finally, one of the protected interior features called out in the designation report is the southwest corner stairway leading to the basement, and the basement level interior consisting of a vault lobby. The stone railing surrounding the top of the stair is just visible in the photo on the left side of the drawing at 2.4A1. The applicant is proposing to enclose this stairway within solid walls, which Commissioner Goldblum referred to as a sheetrock box, as part of the new vestibule at the south entrance. If the stairway needs to be closed to the public for whatever reason, this distinctive feature should be protected in such a way that it remains visible within the space. We suggest a glass partition exactly like balancing the glass enclosure for the potential flower shop on the north entrance. Despite these suggestions, we feel that this is a model restoration and adaptive reuse which should be emulated throughout the city, particularly in Midtown Manhattan, where dozens of LPC and National Register eligible buildings surrounding Penn Station are currently planned to be demolished as part of the disgraced, corrupt former Governor Andrew Cuomo's so-called Empire District. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next I'll be calling on Historic District Council. You should be receiving a request from me. I see that you have accepted it. Okay, just please unmute your mic, state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, this is Kathy Burrell speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. While HDC is overall in support of the preservation and reuse of this historic interior, we have two concerns. The first is the shelving lining on the east wall of the interior, which obstructs the view of this handsome space by blocking the base of the wall, and in particular, the prominent red marble pilasters. It is important to preserve the pilasters' uninterrupted rise from the floor to the ceiling to allow for full expression of their verticality in the space. We suggest that the shelving against the wall be redesigned or rearranged to still allow the full vertical expression of the interior elements on that east wall. Our second concern is the fake awning elements, which are inappropriate. The proposed canopies are solely decorative and obstruct the view of the interior architectural elements and therefore should be removed. Lastly, we are wondering if there is any opportunity to reintroduce the original chandeliers as seen in the historic photos. These beautiful interior elements are worth preserving and also might be used as a guide to help redesign the canopies. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Let me check if more hands raised. All right, I do not see any more hands raised, so there is no one else that wishes to speak.
Okay, great. Thank you. And as noted earlier by the applicant, we received a resolution from Bronx Community Board 7 recommending approval of the application. All right. I'd like to turn back to the applicants and see if you'd like to respond to any of the comments you've heard. Lauren.
Yes, regarding the brass rolling doors, I am not aware of their continued existence here. I don't believe that that fabric is still on site, unfortunately, and I think that that was the condition when the property was purchased. Regarding the awnings, we can definitely look at removing those. I mean, that was a decorative feature of the grocery store furniture. And the casework in the store is removable furniture, and we feel that the majority of the red marble walls will be exposed and shown throughout the room.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? All right, I'm not seeing any final questions, so I am going to request to unmute all of you so we can move to close the hearing and begin our discussion. Commissioner Gustafson, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we'll now begin our discussion. And this is a very important landmark in the Bronx, both an interior landmark and an individual landmark. And we have, as was explained in the presentation, previously approved an adaptive reuse project here that never happened. And I think this is an example of how adaptive reuse is so important to preservation and preservation of our landmarks, and particularly interior landmarks, and buildings really need a use. So I think that the supermarket in general has been pretty successful in other interior landmarks. The bank on 14th Street, which housed Balducci's for a while, and of course the supermarket under the Queensboro Bridge, which was not an interior landmark but treated as such. So, I think we have found in general that it's a good use for a vast open space because the furniture can be reversible and low slung. However, there are a number of changes that are needed for code and functionality. So we'll discuss those in our comments. So Commissioner Goldblum, as our Bronx representative, would you like to start this one?
Happy to. This is a total home run for the Bronx, for this landmark. It's a wonderful, evocative refutation of the comment that landmarks, restrict uses and are elitist in some way. It's just a beautiful, beautiful proposal, and I'm grateful for the applicants taking it on, and I think I hope it's a huge success. I think that the comments that I have are relatively minor and can be worked on with staff. First, in terms of the lighting, I think that the lighting is necessary, as the community board stated, for safety, for people's comfort. I think it would be acceptable to have it lower down, as Michael had suggested, if it penetrates through the windows, instead of through the stone or through the soffits above the windows. But I think it's also okay up on the roof, as long as I would just say they should work with staff to look at the photometrics to make sure that the minimum number of fixtures are used. And I would also suggest they look at maybe raising them up so they're not quite kind of connected with the building visually. But that's something that can be worked on with staff. Second, the signage. I think the banners are fine. I think that the circular signage, because it's a replacement of something that predated the designation, I don't think I could oppose it, but I would strongly recommend that they work with staff to look at removing it to expose the clock faces that are underneath, and instead putting their signage in some other location. I think that it's frankly too high for really effective signage anyway. We've seen really good signage on landmark buildings. The building I'm thinking of is the Brooklyn Borough Hall with the bars. Also, the same system was used for the Puck building. Something like that went in between the windows, I think would be very effective. Something under the awnings that are there now over the entrances might be effective. I think that the potential to expose those clocks, which are really too darn high for really effective signage anyway, is a missed opportunity. I think on the exterior, the idea of, even though it's not part of the site, I would just suggest that you work with the landmark staff to look at those bollards and try to have them designed in a way that's consistent with the building. I think that the sliding doors are acceptable. I think that they're integrated in a reasonable and modest manner that is deferent to the building generally. I think that the applicant can work with staff to work on the details of it. I think that the detailing, especially on the interior of the vestibules, looks schematic in a not particularly good way. So I would say that they should work with the staff on that. And I think that big sheetrock box to the south of the south opening should be lowered so that it goes under the overhanging details and leaves the details exposed. Lastly, I think that the applicant should make very clear with staff on lighting and HVAC and make sure that there's no surprises lurking, and that if they can find fixtures that don't have the charming little awnings, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Devonshire.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that Michael said, although I would require that the lighting be reviewed and perhaps modified so there are fewer fixtures and they're lower on the building.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Chen.
I have less of a concern, but I think some of the signage, as noted by staff, should be looked into.
Okay, Commissioner Lutfi.
I want to echo Michael Goldblum's sentiments about this project overall. I think it's a fantastic project. In general and for the community, it's wonderful to bring this kind of amenity, much needed amenity to the area. And these are projects, doing projects inside these banks are very, very difficult in general because these grand, magnificent buildings were specifically designed for a banking use, and modifying them so that they can work in an adaptive way, depending upon what the use is, can often be challenging. And so when an applicant does their best to make it work so that the architecture is not obscured, not damaged, and in a way that accomplishes their goal, I have to say it has to be commended. And so when you look at, in looking at not only the picture that's here, or the photograph that's here on the screen, but also the general layout shown to us in terms of the interiors, I have to say that, I think they've done a very good job, and everything here is reversible, which is fantastic. And for the most part, does not have an impact on the architecture and its details. I happen to agree with Michael Goldblum's recommendation about lowering that one wall in the southwest area so that it doesn't visually block what's there. I also do feel that there's something about, I'm assuming that we must have approved the Apple Bank signage on the outside in the circular signage, but I'm having a problem with it. There's something sort of jarring about it, and I agree that if the signage is too high, that it should be removed and placed in an understated way, so that it conveys that you've reached your destination, but doesn't in any way compete with the building and its architecture. I think that would be very, very helpful. I also agree with the recommendations about the lighting, that they should be reduced in number and also lowered. And to me, the entry doors seem very schematic and not very well articulated in design. I think it is important for the applicant to work with staff to, go over the details and make sure that they just read this being very, very flat at this moment. That's it.
Okay.
If I could just jump in for a second, Sarah, I just wanted to clarify about the round signs. The late 1930s historic photos, only a few years after the building was built, show signage in those locations, not a clock. They said Dollar Savings Bank and some sort of letters that stand off a few inches. And then there's star elements and I think maybe a building date underneath it as well. So we believe those always were historic sign locations, just for future comments to consider that. The tower itself has clocks on it, and there are small clocks recessed within the monumental entrances, but those particular locations were always signage as far as we can tell.
So if I could say one other thing, I did see that about the Dollar Savings Bank sign, and but that signage was very understated and unobtrusive. So even if we allow signage in this area, I still think that for me, the signage appears very jarring. So.
Okay. And do you think that's the material and the illumination? And if it were a different material and illuminated in a more discreet way, you'd be comfortable with it?
I would be more, I could be more comfortable, and, I'm happy to leave it to staff, but I also would be happy to see it again.
Okay. All right. And just before we continue, Commissioner Goldblum, since you also raised a concern about signs in those location now, given the information Corey has given us.
Oh, it's an interesting question. I didn't realize that. It's interesting to know. I think that for me, they are a little bit too prominent as historical features for the signage that's proposed for them. So I would suggest a more restorative approach on those and putting the new signage down low. It could be either, we've seen various approaches to historic signage that no longer is relevant. Either you kind of leave it and live with the disjuncture, which I think is fine, or you modify it in some way to make it more generic, I think that's also fine, but you keep the spirit of the original. I think that either would be okay. I think that you could also modify it so that you use the same fonts and styles, but put in the tenant information. All three of those have been used in historic building signage adaptations where the signage is a feature of the design. And I think that, again, that could be handled at a staff level.
Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Gustafson.
Yeah, I think this is a terrific project and is a model for the use of a banking space. I'm thrilled to see a supermarket finally dive in again, as we saw once before. I have no comments to add to Commissioner Goldblum's thoughtful suggestions. I did hear one thing that I would comment on from the applicant, which was that the applicant was reluctant to invest the extra dollars in the fire-rated glass. I think with all the work going on here, I know it's expensive, but where that's appropriate, I'd run with it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Shamir Baran.
Thanks. Such an incredible project. It's just thrilling to see this building finally come back and have a revived use, and it's a model of adaptive reuse, and it's very exciting. I agree with so many of the comments, and I agree that many of the final resolution of details can be handled with staff. But I would say that the sliding doors, there might be consideration of something frameless. And I don't know if that's going to be possible. And with respect to the lighting, I actually think that the lighting as it's described, it's hard for me to understand, but should both be lowered to illuminate the activities, but also have a feature once lowered that they can illuminate the ceiling rather than having fixtures kind of on the ceiling that were not there in the case that they were not there originally. So points, drop points, pendant points rather than fixtures themselves, again, unless and I'm not clear about what was originally there. I think that the last point that Commissioner Goldblum made about signage that is where the sort of similar period appropriate fonts are used in new signs would be a good way to go here. But otherwise, I'm very excited about the project and find all the proposals to be appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Holford Smith.
Yes, thanks. I agree. It's a great project. I'm really glad to see this building reused. And I think this is a really good use for it. I think that, the majority of what they're proposing to do is very appropriate. I think that the trick will be the details, especially around the entrances, the sliding doors. I understand working with fire-rated glass is not that easy because they have certain profiles that you have to maintain. But just to make sure that they can keep it as minimal as possible. And at that south entrance to bring that box down to the minimum height so you can see the corner expression of the full banking floor. And I agree that if at all possible to have that wall not be sheetrock, but be also rated glass so you can see into the stair that goes downstairs. I agree also with the light signage at the exterior. The two round signs would be much more appropriate if they were individual letters like the Dollar Savings Bank was originally. And the light fixtures, I think, should be brought down from the parapet to somewhere lower on the building and not be there to wash the entire facade. I think otherwise I agree with the rest of the comments.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chapin. Commissioner Chapin, just accept the request to unmute.
Yes, yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think also it's a great adaptive reuse project, and I agree with most of the comments Michael made about, and others about the lighting, bringing the lighting down to a lower level, and having it evaluated with staff to be as unobtrusive as possible, but also to respond to the need for lighting on the street. The signage and banners, I think, are okay in this case, and the sliding doors, yes, the details need to be addressed with, and the staff, I think, could do that. The sheetrock box should be removed, and the signage on the front with the dollar savings bank lettering is the kind of lettering I think that would be appropriate for this building, as opposed to the kind of sign that's being used, which is more similar to the Apple Bank, and it is really rather disruptive. But I think you could have a signage up there for the supermarket, but to use the other kind of font and separate letters. And if they want to put other signage somewhere else, then they could, propose that if that's necessary. So that's I think those changes could all be made at the staff level, though.
Okay, all right, great. So I think, in general, we are extremely supportive of this adaptive reuse project and really hope that this one moves forward and is a success and really does bring our landmark back to life with this, the restoration work, and, bring people into it to enjoy it in a positive way. But we do have some recommendations for some changes, which I think we can turn over to the staff. So I'll go ahead and I'll make this motion. Okay, in the matter of docket number 22-01377, 2530 Grand Concourse, Dollar Savings Bank Building and first floor interior and individual and interior landmark, a classicizing Art Deco style bank building and interior banking hall designed by Halsey, McCormick, and Helmer and built in 1932-33 and expanded by the same firm in 1937-38 and 1949-52. This is an application to modify entrance infill, install signage and lighting, and alter the interior banking hall. And I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the proposed work will largely be reversible and will support the adaptive reuse of the building. The proposed alterations at the north exit and south entrance will maintain the historic transoms and will result in only minor modifications to the existing framing and the removal of simply designed historic brass doors, and that the design and finish of the new sliding doors will harmonize with the details of the transoms. That the proposed exterior sliding doors at the north tower entrance will be installed in a modified opening previously approved by the commission, and that the design and finish of those doors will harmonize with the historic fenestration above. That the round Liberty Head silver dollar motifs above the north and south banking hall entrances have historically been used for signage. Therefore, the presence of similar signage utilizing similar signage in that location would be in keeping with the commercial evolution of this building. That the proposed exterior vertical stretch banners are simple in design and will not disrupt the composition of the facade. That the installation of the new interior vestibule extension and stair enclosure will not eliminate significant historic features. That the alterations to the interior brass vestibule at the north exit, including removing simply designed historic brass doors and minimal modifications to the transom framing and installing a glass and brass interior ramp, will allow for barrier-free access while utilizing a modern design that does not compete with historic features. That the supermarket shelving, aisles, checkout counters, and other displays are low in scale, thereby preserving upward views of the decorative walls and ceiling, and will not detract from the sense of height and monumentality of the banking hall. That the existing floor was covered at the time of designation and is in a compromised state. Therefore, the installation of limited penetrations through the floor for the supermarket fixtures will not disrupt a pristine floor. that the existing areas of loss or unevenness at the existing floor will be filled in with a tinted epoxy to match adjacent stone, which will preserve the existing flooring while providing repairs that will blend with the historic fabric, and that the removal of a partition at the north end of the banking hall did not result in the removal of historic fabric, and the removal of this wall provides continuity between the banking hall and north tower portion of the building, which features decorative elements and materials that are commensurate with the banking hall. However, I recommend that the applicant continue to work with the staff on developing and refining the details of the doors and the vestibules, lowering the light fixtures and sensitively attaching them as to not damage any significant historic fabric, and reducing their number to the minimum needed. That the applicants work with the staff on a restorative approach for signage at the circles at the top of the north and south entrance, looking toward the historic model of the individual letters. And they may also consider discrete signage at the entries. And that the applicant lower the sheetrock box to come onto the underside of the overhang. And as always, that they continue to work with the details, work with the staff on the details of interior lighting and HVAC equipment that would be appropriate within an interior landmark. Okay, with that, Commissioner Goldblum, would you second that motion?
Second.
Okay, Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye with delight.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
With 10 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, great, that's approved. Please continue to work with the staff to refine those details and aspects that we've discussed, and good luck with the project. We hope it moves forward.
Okay, we're going to now move to public hearing item number 2, LPC 22-02555, an application for a binding report in the Borough of the Bronx, Block 2941, Lot 1, 1700 Fulton Avenue in the Crotona Play Center individual landmark. This is an art moderne style pool complex designed by architects Henry Magoon and Imar Embry II, landscape architects Gilmore D. Clark and Alan R. Jennings, and civil engineers W. Earl Andrews and William H. Latham, and built in 1934 to 36. The application is to install roof railings.
Hey, Commissioners, the applicants have entered the hearing. They now have control of the presentation. You just need to click on your screen, and then you can advance the slides using your arrow keys. Please state your name for the record and you may begin.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Stanley Cho. I'm the project architect for this project and representing New York City Department of Parks and Recreation. So this is for the Crotona Park Bath House, where we're reconstructing the roofs. Just if I can just show you, I'm sure everyone knows where this is. So we have a little delay with the slides. Here we go. In the Bronx, Crotona, and you see an aerial view of the bathhouse. The goals is really simple. The roofs are in really bad condition, and we need to replace them in order to preserve our buildings. But we want to take this opportunity also to bring the roofs up to the current building code and also energy code standards. At Parks, and in particular my division at Citywide Services, we're known for the effort to install green roofs and solar panels on all of our holdings wherever possible and feasible. And we have a whole department dedicated to tracking and implementing building systems and standards that make our holdings as energy efficient as possible, and as we know today, so part of this upgrade is that we have to install, or we want to install, a guardrail around the main bathhouse. And the building code would require that a safety rail be installed over a flat roof, anything over 22 feet high. So we think it's wise for us to comply with that because unfortunately the roof is historically poorly maintained, and we really want to encourage it to be more regularly maintained by ensuring the safety of our staff. And then also with the installation of a new green roof, we want to really encourage regular maintenance. So the guardrail is important not only for our working staff, but also for the well-being of our building, because it'll be maintained more regularly. And of course, that's for the benefit of the public at large and for the generations to come. This is the scope of our work. You see there in that light orange color. The lower left is the filter house roof. And on the right, upper right, is a small service entrance building where we're replacing the roof there. And then below that is the main bathhouse, and it's on that main bathhouse is where we're installing this guardrail. And we're here today because that guardrail is visible from the street. So here are the historic photos. On the right side shows guardrails from the original that are just on the facade there of this clock tower. By the way, this clock tower has recently been renovated. On the left is the pool filter building. This photo is taken from 1964, and on the right side is from the renovation in the 1980s. And if you just, it's kind of hard to see, but on the front there, you see the guardrail just in the front portion of the building, but there's never been a guardrail over the main bathhouse in the rear. Let's see. Again, photos from the 1980s renovation, just showing the guardrails that previously existed, just in the front portion of the building. And here particularly on the right slide here, you see the guardrail that was recently installed for the 2021 renovation of the clock tower. And this, approved by LPC, is more of obviously it's a decorative, thicker guardrail, and it's appropriate for the facade of our building, but our strategy is actually the opposite, to propose a guardrail that's as discreet as possible and as utilitarian as possible. And so here's just some photos of the existing condition of the main bathhouse. You see it's in disrepair and it needs urgent care. Okay, actually, this presentation is an older one, but these photos should be in the appendix, but it's fine. These following slides show renderings on the left of what the guardrails how they would look from certain points around the site. And on the right is a mock-up of confirming the sight line. So here you see it from looking north at the Cortona Bathhouse facade. Here you see it looking more towards the south off Fulton Avenue. I hope you guys can see that. And then here is a view from the playground. And this is a view from the pool deck. And again, this is an older presentation, but this is a plan on the left. And if you just follow my hand here, the rail would just be at the edge of the parapet along the main bathhouse roof here. And also there's a center kind of dip in the roof, which will need a guardrail there as well. On the right side is the detail of our guardrail. Again, we want to attach it to the interior of the parapet. We don't want any penetrations into the roof membrane. It's a 1.5 inch diameter pipe. We propose to paint it gray. But this is, we're just trying to really do as minimal as possible guardrail, just so it doesn't bring any attention to itself. And this is just the appendix of studies we've been doing. And on this, I just wanted to call your attention to the image there in the middle on the upper row. That's essentially what we're proposing. And this is a guardrail we installed at St. Mary's Rec Center in the Bronx to maintain the HVAC equipment up there. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner Goldblum, did you have a question? I thought you may have raised your hand for a moment. I guess.
Lowered it.
Okay. All right, so I don't think we have any questions at this time. Let's see if we have any public testimony. If you're in the meeting and would like to speak on this item, please raise your virtual hand so we can identify you. And I'll turn it over to Sasha Seeley.
Thank you. So I don't have any signups for this item, so I'm just going to take a glance over at the attendees. And I do not see any hands raised, so there is no one that wishes to speak on this item.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'll just note for the record that we received a letter from Community Board 3 recommending approval of this application. Bronx Community Board 3 recommending approval. Okay, so commissioners, any final questions? Last call. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and close the hearing and begin our discussion. So let me just make sure everyone's unmuted so we can do that. Okay, Commissioner Devonshire, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved, Sarah.
Thank you. And Commissioner Goldblum, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And so this is for a railing to be installed at the roof and, has some views from outside and from within. And we'll go ahead and discuss it. Commissioner Shamir Barron, would you like to start this one?
Sure. I think that this is such a beautiful bathhouse, and I'm so happy that they're continuing to take care of it, obviously. And I think that the rail could have been done slightly differently by sort of extending it a bit, but I actually can approve as proposed the railing. I don't think it does call too much attention to itself. I think it's necessary and again, find it appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Holford Smith?
I agree. I think it's necessary, and their mounting detail is a smart one. We're mounting it on the side of the parapet, and that pushes it back a little bit from the face of the masonry wall, but doesn't require them to penetrate the roof, which is good detail. So I can find it appropriate as is.
Okay, Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I think it's necessary, appropriate, typical of this type of railing on this type of institutional building. I think it might be a little better if the railings met at the corners, but I could approve, I could also approve it as presented.
Okay, Commissioner Goldblum.
I agree. I think that Adi's thought about having it pushed in a little bit is probably a good one, and I would recommend that they explore that. If they were to use the cantilever and kind of have a horizontal element to it, or even a foot, it would reduce visibility significantly. But I think it's appropriate as is, and we just have to be grateful that we have such imperial scale public works in our city and that they're being perpetuated and available to everybody. They're just, it's a miracle.
It is great. Commissioner Devonshire.
I think it's appropriate.
Commissioner Chen.
Yeah, I agree with all the comments. This is necessary, and it's good to see this type of public work.
Okay, and Commissioner Lutfi. Commissioner Lutfi.
I agree. This is a great building. I agree with many of the comments. This is very simple design, doesn't compete. I also agree with Commissioner Chapin's recommendation that it would be great if the railings could meet that view. If you want to look at it, it's on page 13, so that there's a visual continuity there.
Okay. And Commissioner Gustafson.
Yeah, I agree that it's appropriate, but I can't let this moment go without emphasizing something as an historian that I'm not sure everyone realizes. I just had an opportunity to wander around this area because, as luck would have it, I got my COVID shots at the Bathgate Post Office right across the street. And I wandered around the neighborhood because this is an incredibly important spot in Bronx history. We've all read The Power Broker, and there is a significant portion of the book dedicated to what they call Heartbreak Highway, the Cross Bronx Expressway slicing up the Bronx. The reroute that the author had recommended went along 174th Street, right smack into Crotona Park. And this bathhouse could very well have ended up being on the service road to that reroute of the highway. The reroute would have saved some 1,500 units from being destroyed in the Bronx, but it would have gone straight through the middle of Crotona Park and right smack through what the site we're looking at right now. I know that has nothing to do with appropriateness, but since we are all about history, I thought we ought to pay attention to that.
Very interesting. Thank you for that, John. Okay, so I think where we are is we have 6 to approve it. There have been some suggestions about setting it back a bit or meeting the corners. And I think what we can do is we can just ask them to voluntarily work with the staff on those suggestions. But I think, as everyone has indicated, they would support it as is. So Commissioner Shamir Baran, would you make the motion?
Yes. In the binding report, LPC 2202555, 1700 Fulton Avenue, Crotona Play Center, individual landmark and art, modern style pool complex designed by architects Henry Magoon and Aymar Embury II, landscape architects Gilmore D. Clark and Ellen R. Jennings, and civil engineers W. Earl Andrews and William H. Latham, and built in 1934 to 36. The application is to install roof railings. I note the historic metal roof railings that were in place at select roofs were replaced by modern metal railings prior to the designation of the complex as an individual landmark. And I recommend issuing a positive report finding that the proposed work will address a safety hazard without eliminating or damaging any significant architectural features, that the presence of metal roof railings set close to roof edges is required by building code and will be compatible with the historic design of the complex, which included metal railings near the roof edges at the portions framing the main entrance, as well as a metal guard as metal guardrails and handrails at the pool deck and stairs, that the railings will be simply designed, neutral in finish, and set back from the stepped massing at the main entrance to the complex, helping them remain subordinate to the historic massing and design of the complex. That the proposed railings will be typical and in keeping with the complex's existing roof railings in terms of material and height, and that the replacement of the railings will be consistent with the symmetry and streamlined forms of the complex, thereby supporting its historic organization, character, and overall design. In reference to the actual extension and specific placement of the railings, I'd recommend that the applicant work with staff to revise and refine.
I think we actually have enough to approve it as is.
Okay.
But we will ask them to, I think there may be the HVAC equipment that conflicts with the corner extension. So I think we can ask them to voluntarily explore those. But I think everybody also, well, at least 6 said that they would approve it as is.
Yep.
Okay, great. So Commissioner Chen, would you second that motion?
Second.
Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
With 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes. And I would note, commissioners, I was corrected. There's only 9 of you here today, so the previous votes were also 9-0. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to the next item now.
Next item is public hearing item number 3, LPC 22-02031, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 254, Lot 17, 123 Joralemon Street in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. This is a house built circa 1993, and the application is to install dormer windows, construct rooftop and rear yard additions, and excavate the basement and rear yard.
Hey, Commissioners, the applicants have entered the hearing. They now have control of the presentation. You just need to click on your screen, and then you can advance the slides using your arrow keys. Please unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you may begin.
There you go. Thanks. I was having a hard time unmuting. My name is Michael Ingwe from Bax Ingwe Architects, and thank you for hearing us today. So 123 Joralemon is a relatively new building that has had a few renovations done to it, even after it had been built. Can you see my cursor, by the way, when I point? Can you see the hand?
Yes, we can.
Great, perfect. So you can see that the ranch house that was built in the 50s, and then you can see the house, the postmodern house that was built in the 90s, actually as an alteration type 2, which is kind of interesting. No C of O past this house. And then this house has been renovated yet again on the interior and the back in the early 2000s. So we've got some context photos, which I'll show you as we move on, because they're better versions of this slide, which just show the different places that you can see. There are 2 kind of alleyways next to the house where you can see the back and where you can see the sides of the building. And obviously the front is visible. One of the things you can see in the front, just go back to the context, is where we're including 2 new dormer windows at the front. There you go. So this is the existing, this is the proposed. I've got close-up versions of this that we'll look at as well, but 2 dormer windows. The center window that's here, this is about 9 inches from the floor at the sill, and at the head is about 3'3" from the floor. So it's not really very usable. We are proposing new windows to make these rooms more usable. Also, we have better versions of this coming up, but you can start to see we're extending the 3rd floor and 2nd floor. You can see the 2nd floor and see where the 3rd floor ends there, where it's extending both, and you can see a visible bulkhead to the roof. On the side, you can again see that extension of the 3rd floor and a chimney on this side. The the front facade starts to show the dormers in a little bit more detail. We have better images for what's happening on the roof. It looks a little flat in the elevation, but this just does give you a few other pieces of what we're doing. Right now, this is just asphalt shingles ending on a 1x4 that's kind of rotted and painted black. We're going to be bringing up on both sides bluestone, which is going to allow the roofing tiles to dye into it, which is a better detail for waterproofing as well. And these will be the EcoStar slate roofing tiles that look very similar to slate. Also shown here, by the way, we've got a garage door, a new garage door, and these will all be new simulated double hung windows. This will be a passive house. The rear facade, again, this is a little flat, but it does show you the extension of the second floor, extension of the third floor, and what's happening with both the third floor and that bulkhead. For materials, we are using brick to match the original. We can find this brick, it's new enough where we know where to get it. Standing seam, dark gray, it'll be a zinc coated, and black aluminum windows on the back, painted on the front. You can see the existing facade, which you'll see much better in the next photo, is aluminum siding. This is already basically built as a bit of a glass box, big skylight in the top, a lot of glass over here. There's a little area way over here. And the proposed, we're rebuilding that glass box for the most part and changing the area away from where it is in the center to where it is in the side. Some context photos, which I'll come back to because I think the next ones show this better. They're just closer. Again, you can see this is where we're extending that back. This is going to be brick. That will be the standing seam. This is the original, or sorry, the existing. You've got aluminum siding on the back, a lot of glass on this facade. You can start to see where that chimney is going to go. We've met with the neighbors a number of times on, well, depending on the side. Oops, hang on. And we actually had this chimney further over this way, but it was blocking the window, so we've moved it back. We've met with the Brooklyn Heights Association a few times on this as well. This will just show you a little bit more information on that, on this existing extension. 8-story building on one side of us, 4+ story on this side. This starts to show, I think, everything a little bit better. This is the extension of that brick on the second and third floors. This is a close-up of that bulkhead from above. This is the side wall that you see from Joralemon Street. You can see the zinc-coated copper. This is the bulkhead. Here's the bulkhead on the side, and then that rear facade where we've extended it in this location. This is a plan where you can start to see the front of this is not used. Our railing is this far back so that you can't see the railing from the street. Mechanical units are hidden behind this chimney as well. Both being cognitive of not only the view from here, but there are windows really close by, and we've met with them as well. So we're going to be doing some plantings around it here and a screen there. Some detail images of that bulkhead. 7-foot ceiling inside, so we're trying to limit the height of that, and simplified details on the top. Some views of the same thing in the back. Here's that bulkhead kind of going down to the second floor, third floor. And then here's that rebuild of the glass box. Right now, there's a skylight that's only here. We're extending that skylight, and it's not visible, but it's still happening on the rear. And then right now, you can kind of see the metal grating right here. There are steps that go out from there. We're relocating those and putting them to the side with no metal grating. This will start to show it a little bit easier. This is the existing side facade where we're going to be extending this back. This is the proposed. Again, we can find this brick, and we're pretty confident with the match. There'll be a bluestone cap along here, and here's the metal railing on the side. Here's that chimney. Same on this side. This side has a driveway that goes down and is the entryway to the building's parking. We're proposing to do a blind window where this window is, keeping the detail otherwise, extending this back, the brick, installing the new coping. This is actually 10 feet back. If you remember, this is actually set back a little bit. So it's not really that noticeable in the drawing. Some sections. This is the existing section of the building with that rear stair up. This is the proposed section of the building, same glass box, same rear wall with our new steps up. We've got a better image of that dormer coming up. Some additional sections showing grade of where neighbors are, the garage of where the neighbor is. By the way, I'm sorry, we are lowering the slab in this cellar, but we're benching, which means that we're not underpinning. And we're lowering it by a foot or two, not a lot. And the foundations, at least to one side, are lower than ours, and the foundation to the other side is 5 or 6 feet away, so it won't affect anybody else. I'm going to zoom through the plans to the top and can come back to them if you guys have any questions. But here's that skylight. Here are the skylights, 2 of them that are existing. This is the proposed. And here's the stair that goes up. And here's that top floor plan where you've got our bulkhead, stair on top of stair, below, coming out. This is the fireman's bath that is always requested, those mechanical units. A closer detail of the bulkhead. We've actually recently brought this down in scale, worked with preservation and Brooklyn Heights Association who requested that. Some details of that, again, kind of showing how we're doing it while still providing adequate insulation. Again, kind of keeping the height to a manageable level on the interior without making it too looming on the exterior. Some additional details and proportions. We're actually following the details of the house. The house has similar details of what we're showing here on the entire facade. So we're following those. And then just some precedent photos of different dormers that are within a few blocks of this house. There's a whole bunch. Here you go.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Okay, Commissioner Lutfi, please go ahead. Let me just make sure you accept the request to unmute.
Michael, I just want to clarify this. Did you just say that that you brought down the size of the dormers?
Yeah, originally we had a higher ceiling, but we also, because it's a passive house, we had a bunch of insulation up there. So the heads of the dormers felt a little bulky. When we first proposed this, the dormers were probably almost a foot wider. So one of the things we're dealing with is how not to compete with the center element. So they've both been brought down in width and in height.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, other questions? Okay, I don't see any other questions, so we'll move to public testimony. And I will turn it over to Sasha Seeley to take us through the testimony. If you're present in the meeting and would like to speak on the item, please raise your virtual hand so that she can identify you. And as always, we'll start with anyone who signed up in advance. Sasha?
Okay, thank you. So I do have quite a few signups for this item. First, I'll be calling on Janice Hall. Janice, you should be receiving a request from me to rejoin the meeting as a panelist. Okay, Janice, I see that you are in the meeting. You can go ahead and unmute your mic. Turn on your camera if you wish. State your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Janice Hall, and I have been working with a group of people here on both sides of the proposed construction. We are opposed to the proposed project at 123 Joralemon Street. It is oversized and its style and proportions are inconsistent with the existing building and with its neighbors. The proposed extension is visible from the street and the end result compromises urban design quality and streetscape character. In your 1993 Certificate of Appropriateness, you specifically refer to and approve, quote, the height and massing, quote, of the 1993 structure. Under the project in front of us today, the resultant height and massing will violate those praised then as appropriate. The sides of the mock-up all the way back can be seen from the street. As a whole, the structure would be very visible, heavy, and incompatible with the other structures on the street and in the neighborhood. Indeed, with the mock-up, the building sides are beginning to look rather like an oil tanker. This oversizing will be worsened by the railings and dense plantings described to us by the architect and which are not reflected in the architect's presentation and mock-up, and which were substituted for what were walls in an earlier version. These railings and plantings essentially constitute walls and will too be easily seen from the street. They will further exacerbate the heaviness and mass of the size of the structure. Going on, I quote from the architect's presentation referred to in the 1993 Certificate of Appropriateness. The new house is also intended to relate architecturally to CPH Gilbert's Daniel Chauncey House of 1891, next door at 129 Joralemon Street, for which it now resembles a carriage house, unquote. Any extension should be evaluated within that context. The proposed extension surpasses that building envelope, compromises the historic architectural intent and overall historic character. Its style inconsistent with the carriage house profile from the street. The dissonance of design and the size does a disservice to our historic neighborhood and erases the harmony with other structures and the enhanced historical reference that was embodied in its original design. I see an oil tanker-like structure that's hiding behind a carriage house with the top of brownstone dormers dropped on top. We hope you look at the results of the proposed project, the building in its totality, rather than the incremental changes the architect's presentation emphasizes. If this project as a whole is not squashed, at the very minimum, we propose a reduction in its views from the street via an offset in width equal to or greater than the height of any parapets, walls, or railings that are added. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next I will be calling on James Francisco. James, you will be receiving a request from me. Okay, I see you have accepted it. James, you can just unmute your mic and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. Okay, James, I see that you are in the meeting. You just have to.
Oh, thank you, Commissioners. I'm James Francisco, a resident of 129 Joralemon Street, and I'm opposed to the extension of the building at 123 Joralemon Street. The proposal for the extended carriage house massing detracts from the historic streetscape and affects quality of life. On site on the sidewalk, it is evident that the proposed massing surpasses the current building envelope and is clearly visible from the street. In order to deliver the proposed scheme, it would require excavation and disturbance to the earth. It is my worry that this excavation could interrupt the historic structure of the adjacent Daniel Chauncey House, and to my knowledge, this impact has not yet been studied. Further, the extension needs to be examined in the context of the well-being of the community. This development does not provide additional housing density. Rather, its purpose is to extend a single-family dwelling, of which the bulk and massing will impact on the health and quality of life to the surrounding neighbors. It is my concern that the massing will permanently block daylight and ventilation access to apartments at 129 Joralemon Street. Many of the residents are elderly, families with infants and children, and other vulnerable populations. Many are long-term residents who have contributed to our community and have resided in their units for decades, one for over half a century. Further, the year-long construction phase will have an impact on the 15 apartments to the east and 54 apartments to the west of this parcel, many of which have been relegated to their apartments with increased work from home hours due to the economic and operational impacts of COVID. Commissioners, these are my humble arguments, and I thank you for your kind consideration on these historic preservation and quality of life matters.
Thank you. Okay, next I'll be calling on Judy Stanton from the Brooklyn Heights Association. Judy, you should be receiving a request from me to rejoin the meeting as a panelist. I see that you are in the meeting now, Judy. You just have to unmute your mic. You have 3 minutes to speak. And state your name for the record, please.
Judy Stanton, speaking for the Brooklyn Heights Association. This is an idiosyncratic house, and we believe that front alterations should be clearly secondary to what is already on the facade. We do appreciate that the project team has already taken steps in that direction, by revising the dormer style to make them plainer compared to the first version that we saw. We think they could go further by also making the dormers smaller. The precedent dormers shown in the presentation do not take up so much of the roof behind. We suggest reducing the frames around the windows or considering a single window instead of two for each dormer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next, I will be calling on Jacob Osoros. Jacob, you will be receiving a request from me to rejoin the meeting. The panelist. Let's see if you have accepted it. Okay, I see that you are in the meeting, Jacob. I just need for you to unmute your mic. State your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Jakob Orcsos. You see Laszlo here, that's my middle name. So I live next door on 129 Joralemon Street on the second floor. And I oppose this extension fully. This is a bulky design. One thing is to discuss how the design looks from the facade and how it preserves or not, it doesn't preserve the facade. But the other thing is how the extension actually plays out in the extension of the lot. It's a very aggressive design. It blocks numerous apartments. It changes people's life permanently. And this fact is blatantly against the sense of this community. We live here for a reason. And this is, seeing this project being just even discussed is hugely, it's suggesting that the community itself is just, it's not relevant until it's not visible from the street. So what I'm advocating for is looking behind the scenes, looking behind the facade, and see how this bulky design will actually permanently change many people's life, and how it intervenes into the community's life, which is hugely against the historic district.
Okay, thank you. Next, I will be calling on Audrey Brown. Audrey, you should receive a request from me to rejoin the meeting as a panelist. I see that you are in the meeting, Audrey. All you have to do is unmute your mic, state your name for the record, please. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon. My name is Audrey Brown. I'm the president of the 245 Henry Street Cooperative, which is directly adjacent to the left side of 123 Joralemon. We are about 10 feet from that building. I'm testifying in opposition to the planned additions to 123 for the following reasons. We believe strongly that it's incredibly important to keep the historic character of our neighborhood intact. And in fact, according to the commission itself, among the important qualities of Brooklyn Heights being designated a historic landmark district is it's composed of a residential neighborhood with a special character of its own that has unusual aesthetic qualities due to the great variety of architectural styles and within the district. We know that this planned addition is a modern structure, clearly, unmistakably visible from the street. And it's not in keeping with the historic nature of the surrounding buildings, particularly the Daniel Chancey House, which is located on the other side of the building. In addition, we believe that this addition will not be stylistically compatible with the current architectural style of 123, which I was around when it was renovated, and it was renovated to replicate a carriage house in order to complement the other historic buildings in our neighboring neighborhood. And I fear that if the commission allows this kind of addition to go forward, it will set a dangerous precedent that could destroy the historic nature of our neighborhood when other brownstone owners jump at the chance to increase their space by building unsightly additions. One other point that needs to be made is this planned addition will clearly undermine the value of the units in our co-op. And we know that one of the purposes of the formation of the Landmarks Preservation Commission was to preserve and stabilize and improve property values in the neighborhood. Many of our units are selling at well over $1 million. A good number of them will face this addition and will have their air, light, and views destroyed by the addition. And some of the owners of our units have also undergone very expensive renovations, and they will never be able to recoup the value of what they've put into their units if this addition is allowed to go forward. One other thing, we share a common wall with this building, and we know from our structural engineer that there are seepage problems with this wall. And we need to have very careful studies done in terms of any impact that this new addition will have on that seepage issue. We're concerned that it could exacerbate the situation and result in damage to our building. So with that being said, we trust that the commission will carefully consider our views on this matter.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'll be calling on George Calderaro from the Victorian Society, New York. George, you should be in the meeting. I just need for you to unmute your mic and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. George Calderaro for the Victorian Society in New York. This little building has aged well and is a welcome presence amongst its neighbors in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. The Victorian Society in New York has no objection to most of the proposed alterations, but we do question the proposed dormer window at the front. These will spoil the nice proportions of the facade. They feel squeezed into the roof space, even in the reduced size the architect just noted. Possibly much smaller dormers with segmented arches matching that of the attic window would work, but we prefer no dormers at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next I will be calling on Jay Krantz. Jay, you should be receiving a request from me to rejoin the meeting as a panelist. Okay, Jay, I see that you are in the meeting. I just need for you to unmute your mic, state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Jay Krantz. I'm also a resident at 245 Henry Street. Sasha, is it possible to share my screen for a minute to show you what this looks like from our side?
No, unfortunately, we're unable to do that.
Okay. Do you see me on camera?
No, I don't see you.
How do I do that?
I've requested for you to start your camera.
Okay. So apologies, it's black and white photo, but I just want to show you this from one of my neighbor's windows. This is how the project looks. It's blocking views of the historic mansion, Daniel Chauncey Mansion, as well as the steeple of St. Charles Borromeo Church on Sydney Place. We're all kind of in the same boat. So one thing I'd like to reiterate for the commissioners is, as Audrey noted, we have all invested in this neighborhood precisely because of its historic nature. And the massing of this project fundamentally degrades those views. Even though from the internal block, there are dozens of us who invest in this neighborhood because of these views, to appreciate the historic nature of Brooklyn Heights. And basically this project will obliterate that. That's the fundamental point I want to get through. It doesn't matter if it's a $1 million apartment, a $200,000 apartment, we're all affected. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next I will be calling on the Historic Districts Council. You are receiving a request from me to rejoin the meeting as a panelist. Okay, I see that you are in the meeting, Historic District Council. I just need for you to unmute your mic, state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, this is Kathy Brill speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC feels that the proposed dormers are proportionally too large and overwhelm the roof form. We believe a single window dormer on either side of the gable that employs the same half-flat arch on the gable would be more appropriately scaled for the facade. As for the rear facade, the existing design is already incoherent and the proposed addition contributes to that incoherence. Additionally, the massing is awkward and overly complex. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and I do have one more sign up. Sean Vigezzi. Sean, are you in the meeting? If you are, could you please raise your hand? I do not see you. Okay. All right, I'm not seeing any more hands raised and I don't see my person with their hand raised. Okay. So that is all the signups.
Okay, and I think Chair Carroll is having some connection issues, so I'll just report that we Also did receive 11 letters in opposition from neighbors in addition to the letters submitted by the people who spoke today. And that CB2 recommended approval of the application. So perhaps Vice Chair Bland can take it from here to move towards discussion.
He's not here.
Or Gustafson. Commissioner John, could you move us into discussion?
Well, let's start with, do we move to close the hearing here yet?
We
You
have
may
not.
want the applicant to respond.
Yeah, to
John.
respond, right.
Okay, let's start with that. Does the applicant have any responses to any of the testimony? We heard substantial amounts of testimony, so perhaps you want to take things one by one?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I am trying to control the screen again, just because I think it'd be good to see it as we talk.
Michael, you'll just want to click on your screen again, and then you can advance with your arrow keys.
Great, thanks. Great, whoops. Okay. I think we'll go to the dormer windows first, and instead of this view, I'll go to the view of the whole facade. In preparation for this hearing, the bulk has not come up as much until we spoke with the neighbors, but the dormers have been kind of it's actually, we pushed our own hearing back a few weeks just to deal with the dormer windows because we spoke with both preservationists and the Brooklyn Heights Association. Almost there. There you go. And I was, I don't mind looking at both sides as well as the center. Maybe we can reduce the center by a few inches as well as both sides, and that would bring this down even more. We've brought it down quite a bit already. The reminder of everyone, I understand that the building is aged well, but the sill of this window is 3.5 inches off the floor, and that's 3'3" off the floor. So creating some sort of window in the front for such a long facade would be really helpful. We looked at the arch top. In fact, actually, I think I was potentially with the Brooklyn Heights Association. I'm forgetting which one we looked at, and I've all decided, I think maybe even with the preservationists, and decided that actually it called too much attention to the dormers, and actually we looked at a arch top and also felt like that put too much attention to it. So that's why we've got the flat top. But I don't mind looking at these again to kind of reduce that in size. In regards to the bulk, one of the things that's being described, I mean, we're not maxing out the FAR, which I know actually doesn't really matter, just because you're either causing an issue or you're not without doing that. But we have reduced the height of, I don't think any of these really show it well. I'll just show it in plan. At one point, the walls that were here and here were 42 inches above grade, and they were even taller in massing. So again, we were trying to work with everyone and have reduced that to just above the roof line and have installed metal railings instead. So that's what's been described. And the metal railings are really light scaled, very thin metal railing, as thin as we can design them and still have them be sturdy. I understand the testimony that was given, but I wanted to kind of give you some context to this. So again, these were about 4 feet high, continued along, brought these down to try to reduce that massing. And then maybe I'll answer any other questions as the commissioners have them, just so I don't keep talking.
Okay, Commissioner Goldblum has his hand raised.
Yeah, just a quickie. Is there any visibility of this from Hunt Lane?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, any other commissioners have final questions for the applicant? Okay, in that case, we'll entertain a motion to close the hearing. Commissioner Shamir Barron, would you make that motion?
John,
So
you may have
moved.
to unmute everybody. Is everyone unmuted?
I've just said so moved.
Okay. I just want to make sure everyone's unmuted to the vote.
Okay, and Commissioner Goldblum, will you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. Let's, just before we get started, just to remind the commissioners, we heard testimony about light and air issues, and as you know, those are not, generally speaking, of our within our purview, and we need to stick to our standard matters relating to things like bulk massing, context, design, etc. Commissioner Goldblum, would you like to start the discussion?
Sure. It's always hard to work with a non-historic building like this because it's hard to say what to do. You know, it's when you have a historic building, you have clear direction. This is a faux historic building that was relatively recent, and it was made to fit in, and therefore I think the standards are a little bit different. So I think that with that in mind, I would look at it as, again, the kind of restrictions that we think about when thinking about historic material and restoring fidelity to a historic building are not really present here, but context are significant. Things related to context are significant. So with that in mind, I think that the dormers in front should be made a little bit narrower, but I don't think that they are inappropriate. I think the decision to have them have a flat roof with detailing that is in sync with the postmodern building is appropriate. I think that the volume and scale of the backyard additions are appropriate. I think had this been a historic house, I'd have more difficulty with it because of the just sheer scale of the expansion. But because this is a new building and because the mass and volume are more or less consistent with the very varied, relatively highly developed context, I think that it is appropriate. I do think, however, that the applicant should study the fenestration and materiality of the rear facade, which I think, had we seen that as an addition to a historic block, might be considered to have too much glass and lack a sense of scale. I think that that it would benefit from some. I know this applicant knows how to do that kind of thing and could do it relatively simply, and it might be something that could be done with staff. But otherwise, I think that the application is appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Devonshire?
I'm further to what Michael was saying, actually. I don't approach this as if I'm looking at a building that's historic or not historic, but one that is within an historic district. And does it enhance the district? And then further in my head, I dealt with the issue of the added bulk as if this was to us for the first time within an historic district. And I do not have any trouble with the additional bulk that's being added to this building. I don't think it diminishes the historic designation of the district at all. I do agree that the rear facade treatment is very awkward, and I think they can work with staff to reduce that. I think that the dormers on the front facade need to be reduced by at least 1/3, not just a couple of inches here or there, but they need to be reduced by 1/3. Otherwise, I think it's okay.
Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with some of the comments by the two Michaels. I think, as Commissioner Goldblum alluded to, and I think Commissioner Devonshire's comment about the rear facade, the one we're just looking at, and I get a sentiment that based on the testimony and some of the comments that the dormer size need to be reduced.
Okay, Commissioner Lutfi?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with these comments. Work with staff to make sure to reduce the dormer size and make sure that the proportions make sense with the roof line. And also the rear facade, especially at the second level. I think the windows, the amount of glazing should be clean. It needs to be, the whole thing should be cleaned up a little bit.
Thank you. Commissioner Shamir Barron?
Thanks. I think, had this been, as Commissioner Goldblum noted, a historic building, I would have been opposed entirely to these dormers. But as it is not a historic building, I think that they should be reduced. And I agree with Commissioner Devonshire, reduced by at least a third so that they really are substantially smaller than they currently appear. The overall bulk is not as significant to me as just sort of the appearance in the rear. And I think that that can be refined, sort of tightened up, and they can work with staff on that.
Thank you. Commissioner Holford Smith?
Yes, I think I agree that the dormers at the front can be appropriate, but I agree that they should be much smaller, and I might suggest that they be a single window, which might fall into the 1/3 size category that Michael Devonshire suggested. The rear, I agree, it has I think, way too much glass for something normally approved in this kind of context. And not only is there glass on the walls, but there's a huge amount of glass in terms of skylight. So I would ask them to work with staff. I think, yeah, as Adi said, if this was a historic building, I think that this bulk would be very inappropriate. But since it's a modern building, I'm okay with it.
Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I agree with other commissioners that the dormers should be reduced. I also have a concern which I think relates to the treatment of the back. I think that I actually think the design of the back is rather attractive and modern in most respects. I'm concerned about in the slide 9. It appears that you really can see, as some of the testimony reflected, you can see part of the addition looming over the building. And it seems to me that that upper story, final upper story, ought to be reduced so that it doesn't appear that it's above the roof. And that might help deal with the issue of, sort of how the back, works. I think that I'm not that concerned about the glass because of the fact that it is a modern building. I think that, there might be some adjustments to fenestration as was discussed. But if you see what I'm talking about, you've got a whole piece of the building, a whole piece of the extension, which appears to be higher than the roof line from a certain angle, which I think is not desirable. So I'd like to see that reduced. And that could be part of the general working with the back on the, to make it, but in general, I think that the design in the back is appropriate with that exception.
Thank you, Commissioner Chapin. And I'm in general agreement with the rest of the commissioners myself. I think we have enough to vote this out with a couple of points and suggestions for working with staff. So Commissioner Gold.
Okay. All righty. Regarding 123 Joralemon Street in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District, the application is to install dormer windows, construct rooftop and rear yard additions, and excavate basement and rear yard. I note The building was constructed in 1993 pursuant to a certificate of appropriateness, and I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the alterations to this modern building will not eliminate or damage any significant historic features, architectural features, that the dormers are a common feature on pitched roofs at buildings throughout this historic district, that the proposed dormers will relate well to the design of the building in terms of their placement, materials, finish, and details, and window sash configuration, that the proposed addition will only be visible from the public thoroughfares from limited vantage points through the neighboring driveway and side yard, that the masonry side walls of the addition will align with the existing side parapets in height and match them in terms of materials and finish, thereby maintaining typical unified side facade compositions. That the portion of the bulkhead extending higher than the masonry sidewalls will be simply designed small in size and typical in terms of materials and finish, and placed at the rear of the building, help remain a harmonious secondary presence. That the proposed addition will not increase the footprint of the building or exceed the height of the neighboring buildings. That the materials palette and simple detailing of the addition will be consistent with the character of secondary facades within this historic district. That within this surrounding context, featuring large neighboring building with rear facades which do not closely align with the rear facade of this building, the combination of step massing, large windows, mixed materials will not detract from the neighboring buildings, and that the limited excavation of the rear yard, which abuts the neighboring yards at different grade levels, is not part of a continuous grouping of rear yards and will not therefore detract from the central green space. However, I recommend that the applicant work with staff to reduce the dormers in size by at least a third and explore the design and fenestration of the rear facade to make it more commensurate with its surroundings.
Commissioner Holford Smith, would you second that motion?
Second it.
Okay, Mark, will you take the vote, please?
Chair Carroll, are you prepared to vote?
Yes,
Sarah?
I was able to join and I did hear the discussion and I agree with all of the comments and I vote yes, aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Devonshire.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
With 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, so that's approved. Thank you, Commissioner Gustafson, for taking over so seamlessly. That concludes our morning's session, and we will break for 30 minutes and return at 1 o'clock for the afternoon session. We'll ask all members of the public to exit the meeting at this point and rejoin the meeting at 1 o'clock. And commissioners, you know, you just need to turn off your audio and video. We'll see you at 1 o'clock. Thanks.
Dead on time.